Some people say you were actually a Mossad agent sitting in front of me, and you were Charlie's handler. They say that the rings on your fingers, which are
my kids'
your kids' initials,
my wedding band.
Last week, Erika Kirk, the widow of Charlie Kirk and now the CEO of Turning Point USA, sat down with CBS for an interview that instantly set the internet on fire. The conversation went viral not because of what she said, but because of how she acted, her expressions, her pauses, her subtle glances. Everything had people analyzing every frame. But when you look beyond the viral moments, the real story hides in the quiet, easily missed details. Those small gestures might just say more than her words ever could. So what do Erika's body language, tone, and reactions really show about what's going on beneath the surface? Let's break it down step by step. From the start, there's a rapid mix of emotions flashing across her face, the kind of split-second tells that say a lot without a single word being spoken. One of the clearest examples happens when the interviewer mentions that they basically said that because Charlie believed certain things. At that moment, Erika glances at her, squinting slightly. And not just any squint, but a sharp tension around the lower eyelids that repeats throughout the interview. That tiny movement might seem meaningless, but it's actually a big deal. Psychologists say we often squint when we're trying to make sense of something, like when you're narrowing your eyes to see a picture more clearly. Subconsciously, it's the same when you're trying to understand or explain something clearly. It's the body's quiet way of saying, wait, let me think this through, and that habit shows up in Erika again and again as she tries to make sure every word lands just right. We see that same squint again in this moment. And here's where it really gets interesting. Erika uses that expression in two totally different ways. When she's in advisor mode, giving guidance or sharing her version of wisdom, that squint shows up as if she's saying, you get it? Or does that make sense? It's her go-to gesture when she's trying to come across as thoughtful or insightful, but that same squint pops up again when she's not so calm. In moments of irritation or when she clearly doesn't like what's being asked, you can see it right here, and trust me, it comes back more than once during this interview. If you rewatch it closely, you'll notice it every time she gets skeptical.
Kind of justified it. They basically said that because Charlie said or believed things that they believed were controversial or even hateful, that he somehow had it coming. What do you say to people who justified his death?
You're sick. He's a human being. You think he deserved that?
Annoyed, or starts showing flashes of frustration. It's like she's trying to figure out how far to push back or how to keep her cool in the moment. Right after one of those tough questions, Erika glances up, something she does often before answering. It's a quick reflex, like she's searching for the right words or rehearsing her next line. Then she hits back with, "You're sick." And right there, we see the first of what experts call a universal emotion. Reactions that look the same across all human cultures. These aren't learned gestures, they're built into us. One of those is anger, and you can spot it right away on her face. Anger is easy to recognize. Furrowed brows, a tightened jaw, and a sharpness in the eyes. But here's the tricky part. Those same features can also appear when someone's concentrating hard. What gives anger away are two extra details on flared nostrils and lifted upper eyelids. The kind of look that says, "Don't push me." And that's exactly what we see from Erika. After saying, "You're sick," as she continues with, "He's a human being," the irritation returns. That same squint tightens again, the lower lids narrow, and her head leans back like she's challenging the question. Her face practically says, "What's wrong with you?" Then suddenly her eyes widen, a textbook sign of anger, followed by her backing up sharply when she throws out, "You think you deserve that?" This time, her reaction gets stronger. Her squint deepens, her whole posture shifts back, and if you look carefully near her nose, there's a slight wrinkle forming. That's not random. That's the micro expression of disgust. It's one of the easiest universal emotions to spot. When we're disgusted, the body literally tries to block out the source. We pull back, crinkle the nose, close our mouths, and even squint our eyes tighter as if saying, "I don't want to see or smell that." Erika's quick recoil shows that same instinctive rejection, the body's natural "keep that away from me" response. So in just a few seconds, we've already seen irritation, anger, and disgust flow one after another at a powerful emotional cocktail.
Tell that to my 3-year-old daughter. Excuse me. You want to watch in high res the video of my husband being murdered? and laugh and say he deserves it?
But then the tone shifts again. As Erika says, "Tell that to my 3-year-old daughter," something changes in her face. Her eyes open wider, her chin lifts sharply, a move known as a chin jut, often linked to confrontation or defiance. People unconsciously do it when they're gearing up for a verbal or emotional clash, and just when you think the moment has peaked, another emotion quietly appears. Ooh, sadness. You can see it unfold in real time. First comes the subtle, hard swallow. Not a universal cue on its own, but often connected to trying to hold emotions back. Then her eyebrows pull together and rise slightly at the inner corners, a movement controlled by a muscle called the glabella. At the same time, her chin starts to tense, forming what psychologists call chin bossing. Together, those signs, the lifted inner brows, tension in the chin, and a soft droop in the facial muscles, make up the universal expression of sadness. Tears begin to form, but here's what's fascinating. Tears aren't required for sadness to be genuine. Many people never cry, yet their faces still reveal that inner pain through those subtle muscle shifts. In Erika's case, though, the tears add intensity to what's already visible. A mix of exhaustion, pain, and loss all hitting at once. And here's something worth noting. That upward pull of the inner brows is extremely hard to fake. Even skilled actors struggle with it. People often try it when watching breakdowns like this, but unless you can raise only the inner corners while keeping the outer ones still, it never looks real. The muscle coordination is unique to authentic emotional distress, and in this clip, it happens naturally and instantly, right as her voice cracks. Still, not everyone watching was convinced. Online, some viewers said something about her sadness felt a bit staged. They pointed to her repeated "excuse me," the dramatic sniffles, and the way she looked upward as if emphasizing the tears. To them, it seemed like she might be leaning into the emotion instead of just letting it happen. That's what made the moment so divisive: genuine emotion or practiced presentation. We'll dig deeper into that pattern later because it says a lot about how Erika communicates in public. The mix of emotional vulnerability and self-control.
As you know, the last person that Charlie ever spoke to was a Utah Valley student named Hunter Kozak. And he's here tonight, and he wants to ask you a question.
Hi there. Erika, I want to tell you how much I appreciate your calls for peace and unity, and I'm likewise horrified by the people in my so-called camp who were cheering about Charlie's murder. But even worse is when powerful, influential people on either side of the aisle stoke the flames. When they do it, the flames can become an inferno. And this leads me to Donald Trump, the most powerful and influential person on earth, who has more responsibility than anyone else to put the flames out. Just last month, President Trump called on 6 Democratic lawmakers to be tried for sedition, which he clarified was punishable by death. He then reposted a simple message.
That often leaves audiences split. But before we move on, there's one quick thing to clear up that sharp-eyed viewers might have noticed. During the same question, there's a tiny twitch on the left side of her mouth. Just a quick upward flicker. Some people thought it looked like a flash of contempt, another micro expression that appears on just one side of the face, often as a smirk. But in this case, both sides of her mouth move slightly, and both eyes squint just a bit. More like a small smirk or reaction than a true sign of contempt. A real contempt signal usually comes with a distinctive scrunch in the cheek and a half smile that feels unbalanced. Here, that tension isn't there, so while it's possible, it doesn't fully match the pattern. So far, the interview shows a fascinating emotional range. Irritation turning to anger, disgust flashing through, then sadness taking over, all in less than a minute. And while some see raw emotion, others sense strategy, a deliberate rhythm in how she shifts between expressions. It's a complex mix that we'll explore more soon, especially when we get into the next question, where the interviewer Hunter uses a clever technique studied in psychology and persuasion to test how Erika reacts under pressure. The first principle at play here is something psychologists call labeling or attribution, and both terms mean roughly the same thing. It's a subtle yet powerful communication trick that's been proven again and again in behavioral research. The idea is simple. If you use a positive label to describe someone during a conversation, that person is more likely to act in a way that fits that label. Here's how it works. In one famous study, a school principal told a class that they were neat and tidy. Even though those kids weren't necessarily cleaner than others before that, after being described that way, they started keeping their space more organized. Why? Because no one wants to prove a compliment wrong. When people hear good traits attached to them, like generous, kind, or disciplined, They subconsciously try to live up to that label, and that's exactly what the interviewer, Hunter, did in this conversation.
Hang them. I think that you've been making strides to bring peace to our country, and that Turning Point has been asking Democrats to decry the individuals who cheer for violence. I have and will continue to decry them. But any good faith effort to stop political violence must hold both parties to the same standard and expectation. So in that spirit, will you condemn the violent rhetoric of Donald Trump, the most powerful and influential person on earth?
I appreciate your question. You know my heart. Why would I ever say, yes, go for people? This is so much deeper than just one. I understand your sentiment, I do. But this is also so much deeper than just one person.
He started his question by saying how much he appreciates Erika's calls for peace and unity. Whether that's his genuine feeling or just part of his strategy doesn't really matter. What's important is that he said it out loud. By doing that, he gave Erika a positive label, the voice of peace and unity. Then, as he continued, he likely hoped she'd keep responding in a way that matched that image. The second principle Hunter used is just as interesting, or it's known as reciprocity. This concept is deeply rooted in human nature. Basically, when someone does something for us, no matter how small, we feel an internal urge to return the favor. This behavior has been hardwired into us since ancient times when survival depended on being fair within a tribe. People who only took and never gave back risked being pushed out, so that give-and-take instinct became part of who we are. You see reciprocity everywhere, like when stores hand out free samples, not just to be nice, but because you're more likely to buy something afterward. It's psychological balance in action. So in this interview, Hunter used that same approach. He said something along the lines of, "I'm horrified by people in my own circle who cheered for what happened to Charlie." Then he added that he condemns anyone, and no matter what side they're on, who supports violent language. That's his setup. Then comes the key part. He asks Erika if she'll do the same. That's reciprocity in motion. "I'll take a stand against my side. Will you take one against yours?" It's subtle, but it's an incredibly effective technique in interviews and negotiations. Now watch Erika's behavior as he says it. The moment he mentions that specific political name, her entire expression shifts. First comes the familiar squint, the same one we've seen before, signaling skepticism and mild irritation. You can practically read her thoughts. I see where this is going. Then she takes a visible breath, not just a calm inhale, but a tight one that lifts her shoulders, a sign of stress or tension. Her chin then rises, slow but deliberate, a classic cue of confrontation. It's not the kind of quick, sharp movement that says, "I'm ready to fight," but rather a slow lift that says, "I'm preparing my ground."
Charged with the murder of your husband. And yet there are a huge number of conspiracy theories, you might call them brain rot, that are spreading right now online about the actual story behind the reality. One, people say that Tyler Robinson was actually a MAGA Republican. Or two, some people say you were actually a Mossad agent sitting in front of me, and you were Charlie's handler, and Israel killed Charlie.
Right.
Other people say that a number of men in the crowd were wearing maroon T-shirts, and this signifies that his killing was an elite airborne operation, whatever that means. They say that the rings on your fingers, which are...
And almost immediately, she drops her chin again, pulling slightly inward, a subtle guard, almost defensive. You can sense she's assessing every word carefully, scanning for traps. And then comes the smile. But this isn't the warm kind of smile you'd expect when someone appreciates a question. This one is flat. The corners of her mouth pull sideways instead of upward, and the eyes don't match the expression. Real joy brings crinkles near the eyes and puffed cheeks. Here, her face stays still. If you cover either her eyes or her mouth, neither half of her face looks genuinely happy. It's a mask, polite, but cold. When she finally speaks, she says, "I appreciate your question," but her tone doesn't carry an ounce of gratitude. It's measured, flat, restrained, the verbal version of a slow exhale after biting your tongue. Combined with her sharp chin movement right before, it reads as quiet confrontation. A polite way of saying, "I know exactly what you're doing." Now comes the most telling part, her actual answer. She glances upward again, the same thinking gesture we've seen before, but this time she holds it longer as if she's carefully shaping her response. She begins by saying, "You know my heart," and starts reaffirming what he just said. reminding him of her values, her public image, her faith. It's a soft redirection, not a straight answer. Then she follows up with, "Why would I ever say yes? Go hurt people." And that's where things get really interesting. Because technically that's not what she was asked. The question wasn't about approving actions, where it was about condemning specific rhetoric. Her answer dances close to the topic but avoids fully stepping into it. This is what experts call a non-answer statement. It happens in interrogations and interviews all the time. When someone gives a response that sounds like an answer but doesn't actually address the full question, that's a red flag for careful messaging. Erika's response acknowledges the concept of violence, condemning the act, but avoids directly naming or rejecting the person tied to it. It's a partial answer, not a complete one.
This starts at the home, okay? This starts with family. This starts with a seed that grows and grows. You can choose to have evil in your heart, or you can choose to have light. No, I will never agree with political violence. My husband is a victim of it. I'm a victim of it. But what I'm trying to say here is that we can blame everyone else. We have to look in the mirror. When you become a father, when you become a mother, how are you raising your kids? Are you taking responsibility, or are you giving them a device and saying, go down that rabbit hole? I'm trying to go to Pilates class.
Then as she continues, she starts looping around, drifting into broader points about morals, family, and values. This starts at home, she says, a statement that reframes the issue entirely. That squint appears again, this time the teaching version, the one she uses when she's delivering a message and looking for validation, almost saying with her eyes, "Do you get what I'm saying?" It's a subtle shift from defensive to instructive as she moves away from the politically loaded question towards something safer, a message about family and inner values. Then, just when you think she's done dodging, she circles back with, "No, I will never agree with political violence." Now, that statement sounds strong on its own, but again, it avoids the exact question asked. It's a broader rejection of violence in general, not a specific condemnation of the rhetoric Hunter mentioned. Her body language right after that tells the story. Her lips tighten, the corners of her mouth turn slightly downward, and she gives off the physical version of, "That's my final answer." That downward mouth tension, the subtle frown paired with compressed lips, often means "I'm done talking about this." It's what body language experts call a mouth shrug or a lip compression. It's the same expression you'd make after saying, "That's all I have to say," or even silently agreeing with something unpleasant without wanting to add more. Then comes a quick shift in tone. Erika continues, saying she's been personally affected by political hostility, calling both herself and her husband victims of it. As she speaks, you can see Hunter's expression soften. His eyebrows raise slightly and draw together in the middle, a universal cue for sadness. His head tilts and he begins nodding slowly, showing empathy for her loss. For a moment, the tension between them seems to break. It's a shared moment of grief and understanding. Real or not, it looks authentic on camera, but the calm doesn't last long. As Erika moves back to her comfort zone, talking about family, parenting, and responsibility, that shared sadness fades when she says, "We could blame everyone else, but you have to look in the mirror when you become a father or mother."
My kids' initials, my wedding band, the Medal of Freedom, my engagement ring.
But apparently they symbolize some kind of secret plot. There's also a new theory that Egyptian aircraft have been tracking you. What is going on? Why are there so many conspiracies spreading about what seems to be a pretty open and shut case?
This is the first time that we have seen evil on display where we have social media at our fingertips. Something so evil that happened, people are wanting answers immediately. They are wanting to figure out how to wrap their mind around this.
Hunter's expression tightens again. His brows, which had lifted in sympathy, drop back down. It's like he's emotionally resetting, the empathy closing back off as the discussion moves away from shared pain and back into philosophical territory. So within just a few minutes, we see three powerful psychological dynamics at play. First, labeling and establishing a positive identity that pressures consistency. Second, reciprocity, offering fairness to encourage mirrored behavior. Third, Deflection, shifting from a direct question to safer, generalized themes. Erika manages all three with striking precision, balancing vulnerability and control, emotion and calculation. It's a fascinating moment that shows how public figures often walk the razor's edge between authenticity and strategy, especially when the cameras are rolling and every blink, breath, and squint becomes part of the story. As Hunter looks away for a moment, you can almost see the confusion hit him. He's realizing that Erika has drifted far from the question. She's no longer addressing what he asked. She's moved into this "we could blame everyone else" discussion about family and values. His nodding stops, the agreement disappears, and it's clear he knows he's not getting a straight answer to the question about whether she would directly condemn that individual he mentioned earlier. Now let's shift to another layer, this time focusing on Barry, the CBS interviewer. At the beginning of this town hall-style segment, Barry introduced the show as a space to hear from both sides and stay neutral. But as the interview went on, especially with questions like this one, that neutrality faded fast. She began clearly taking Erika's side, not in an aggressive way, but in a tone that seemed emotionally invested. To be fair, in interviewing or interrogation settings, taking the subject's side a little can actually be a smart tactic. It creates rapport, helps the person relax, and makes the conversation feel less confrontational. However, the trick is subtlety, empathy without full endorsement. Something like, "I can imagine how those rumors must have affected you." Opens the door gently.
Egyptian planes.
Egyptian
Egyptian
planes. Do you believe that Tyler Robinson murdered your husband?
Yes, I do.
Why do you think it is so hard for so many people to believe that reality?
Because it's too simple. Again, everyone always has to think there's more to the story. Well, sometimes there's not. I've seen the autopsy report. I've seen our case pulled together. I've been in constant contact with our lawyers, the prosecuting team. I've seen it all. And let me tell you this, why should we, prior to the trial, lay all of our hands and cards on the table for the defense team to see, to somehow then...
But Barry went a step further, almost mocking the online speculation, calling certain theories brain rot. That phrasing shows visible irritation rather than detached curiosity. That kind of attitude can backfire. It can make the interviewer appear biased, and in this case, it might have given Erika more confidence, as if they were both on the same team, rolling their eyes at the critics. As Barry listed the more bizarre online rumors, you could see Erika's reactions shift dramatically. She rolls her eyes, smirks, shakes her head, even laughs quietly under her breath, all those subtle cues of mockery. It's as if she's saying, "Oh, please, you can't be serious." The gestures become especially animated when Barry brings up specific topics floating online. But the energy changes once the rings are mentioned, and that's when Erika's entire demeanor sharpens. She suddenly leans forward, raises her hand to show her rings, and starts explaining what each one means, passionately, almost proudly. "These are my children's initials," she explains, walking through each detail. Then she holds her hand up again as if to say, "Take a good look, nothing to hide here." It's direct, firm, and confident. Behaviorally, that moment reads as genuine conviction. She isn't stumbling or defensive, she's answering head-on with poise. Her tone is steady, and she doesn't over-explain or ramble, which people often do when they're nervous or fabricating. It's a clear example of authentic self-assurance, the confidence of someone who finds a rumor ridiculous and wants to shut it down fast. Then Barry finishes her list of questions, and as Erika gears up to respond again, we catch something new. A quick lip lick. It's subtle but worth noting. Throughout the interview, that hasn't been one of her repeated gestures, which makes it stand out more here. Lip licking can signal slight stress since our mouths tend to dry up when we're anxious, but it can also be a grooming behavior on subconsciously trying to look composed before giving a firm answer. Aside from that single tell, Erika's response remains steady. Her speech is smooth, she maintains eye contact, and she doesn't hesitate. If anything, the lip gesture just adds a touch of tension.
I don't even know what they would do with it. But what I will say, and I want to get on the Egyptian plane thing, take a flight on that for a second. I was pregnant for 90% of those trips. Mind you, I've never, all those places they said I've traveled, I've never been. I mean, I've been, but I'm not within those dates that they've.
But you even said you need to address
No, but this is, yeah, but I do on that one, only because, from a humor standpoint, I intentionally, when I was pregnant, hid. Not because I was embarrassed, Not because I didn't want anyone. Yes, we did keep it very private.
Understandable given the subject. And remember, one gesture alone doesn't mean much. You always have to read the cluster of behaviors. Here, everything else stays consistent with calm confidence. Then she pivots to the bigger issue, talking about how people online expect instant answers to complex questions. She even pauses mid-sentence, glances upward, and laughs slightly as she throws out the phrase Egyptian planes, clearly mocking one of the wilder rumors circulating online. In that exact moment, she performs what's known as an eye block, closing her eyes tightly for a brief second while raising her hand slightly as if saying, "I can't believe we're even discussing this." Research shows that this eye-blocking gesture happens when someone is either trying to shut out an unpleasant thought or process disbelief. It's the nonverbal equivalent of, "Ugh, really?" And that's exactly the vibe Erika gives off. She even interrupts Barry to say, "No, wait, we're talking about this Egyptian planes thing," making it clear she's irritated but wants to address it directly. As Erika dives into that tangent, Barry makes a bold move. She cuts in suddenly with a direct question. "Do you think Tyler Robinson did this?" The timing is sharp, interrupting right in the middle of Erika's irritated explanation. That kind of question is actually a classic interview technique. It's meant to catch someone off guard and test how they handle an unexpected pivot. The problem, however, is the wording. "Do you think he did this?" is a closed-ended question, one that only allows for a yes or no. Those are much easier to manage than open-ended ones like, "What do you think really happened?" or "Walk me through your perspective." Closed-ended questions don't force long explanations, so you get less to analyze. Still, even with that limitation, Barry's question lands, and Erika's reaction is telling. Without hesitation, she says, "Yes, I do," while locking her eyes directly on Barry. Her tone is clear, confident, and immediate. Not shaky or uncertain. Her eyes widen slightly and her blinking almost stops entirely, which can indicate focus or determination. Now let's pause there. There's a long-standing myth.
But it's because it was a moment very sacred. I was growing a human inside of me, my baby. The world that Charlie and I live in is very toxic at times.
Yeah.
And when you are growing a beautiful child in you, I don't want to be around it. I want to enjoy eating my In-N-Out burger and my hot fudge sundae. That's what I want to do. I'm pregnant and I have 9 months to own it. You really think I'm going to be on an Egyptian plane while I am wanting to be with my In-N-Out burger and my chocolate milkshake? No, I'm not. So if you want to go through my flight log, go right ahead. It's very boring. You say I was here on this date. I have a photo in my phone to prove that I actually was in the hospital because I was having contractions. So game on.
That liars avoid eye contact, but research shows that's not always true. In fact, many people making deceptive statements actually increase their eye contact because they're monitoring your reaction, trying to gauge if you believe them. Others, meanwhile, do the opposite. The real key is deviation from baseline, how someone's behavior changes compared to their usual pattern. In Erika's case, holding direct eye contact isn't unusual. Throughout the interview, she's maintained long, steady gazes when speaking, with both Hunter and Barry. So this intense stare doesn't necessarily mean dishonesty. It fits her pattern. Her expression, open eyes, tight jaw, and steady tone, looks more like someone who truly believes what they're saying, or at least wants you to believe she does. Of course, that doesn't mean her statement is automatically true. It simply shows that she delivered it with genuine conviction. Body language alone can't confirm deception. There's no single gesture that screams liar. Unlike universal emotions like anger or sadness, deception doesn't have one consistent look. The best we can do is look for clusters, patterns that stray far from baseline. Here, Erika's consistency works in her favor. So at this point, she's showing high confidence and no visible distress, suggesting she believes what she's saying, or at the very least, she's comfortable standing behind that version of events. Then comes a curious shift. As she continues explaining her reasoning, she says something like, "Why would we put all this out there for the defense team to," and then she trails off. She clearly wants to make a point about how sharing too much public information could backfire legally, but she fumbles slightly on the specifics. It feels like she half remembers a detail she read somewhere, maybe about what a defense team could do with leaked evidence, but can't recall the exact phrasing. She pauses, searching for the right words, and you can see that flicker of confusion cross her face. What's interesting, though, is that even as she stumbles on the content, her delivery remains confident. She doesn't freeze or panic. She simply moves past the thought, closes her eyes briefly again in another eye-blocking motion and shifts the conversation elsewhere. That eye block looks like a small internal reset, her mind saying, let's move on. And move on she does, straight back to the Egyptian plains topic. That tells us a lot. It shows that she's aware she lost her train of thought for a moment, but instead of letting the silence linger or appearing rattled, she quickly redirects to safer territory, one she feels strongly about and can speak on comfortably. All in all, this part of the interview paints Erika as composed, confident, and calculated. Someone who doesn't easily lose control under pressure. Even when challenged or interrupted, she finds her footing again fast. Whether you agree with her or not, her behavioral control here is undeniable, and that's what makes this whole exchange so fascinating, because confidence in moments like this can be both armor and performance all at once. When Erika tripped up over that comment about the defense team, losing her words for just a second, something fascinating happened. The moment her confidence dipped, her brain instantly grabbed for safer ground. That's why she jumped straight back into the Egyptian plains rumor with full force. Psychologists call that compensating confidence, when uncertainty in one area pushes someone to overassert in another. And that's exactly what we see here. As soon as she pivots, everything about her shifts. Tone, posture, energy. She's suddenly calm, bold, and almost mocking toward the people who spread that story. Even when Barry interrupts and says she doesn't need to explain it, Erika doubles down saying, no, I want to. She lists her reasons point by point with sharp precision, like she's rehearsed it 100 times. It's not frantic, it's firm. The rhythm of someone who believes she's finally on solid ground. Now, here's something worth mentioning. When people lie, their tone often becomes salesy, too polished, too eager to convince. Truth tellers, on the other hand, tend to just share facts and move on. And in this case, Erika doesn't sound like she's pitching anything. She's dismissive, matter of fact, almost tired of explaining. That doesn't prove she's right, but it does show she feels confident in her version. Then came the moment everyone online noticed. When Barry said Candace Owens, instantly Erika's smile disappears. Her face hardens. Her eyes lock onto Barry like a laser. For several long seconds, she doesn't blink. It's not an accidental micro-expression. It's deliberate. A statement. She wants people to see that glare. Next, her chin lifts slightly. That slow, deliberate movement we've seen whenever she feels challenged. And then it drops again as she says coldly, stop. Just stop. It's confrontation wrapped in control. Viewers flooded social media calling it icy, iconic, terrifying, but whatever word you use, the message is clear. She's not hiding her feelings toward Candace Owens. And here's the thing. Yes, Erika's delivery is theatrical. The long pauses, the intense eye contact, the whispered emphasis, it all feels larger than life. But that doesn't automatically mean it's fake. It might just be how she communicates. She's been in pageants, she's led church audiences, she's delivered speeches, she performs emotion as naturally as she breathes. That style makes her polarizing. Some people call it powerful, others call it rehearsed. But from a behavioral point of view, performative doesn't always equal deceptive. It can simply mean expressive. And that's what's happening here. Her real frustration mixed with practiced presentation. By the end of the interview, the tension fades, the questions soften, the conversation turns reflective, less confrontation, more control. But those earlier flashes of emotion, that's where the truth of her communication really lives, somewhere between sincerity and strategy. So what do you think? Was that authenticity or performance? Let me know down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you on the next one.